Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to episode 4 of the HNE Show. And this is actually a really interesting show because I think in terms of, podcasts and, shows like this, it's very rare we get back-to-back episode kind of continuation in terms of both topic and guest and just the whole thing all together. So if you couldn't tell by the description and slash or depending on where you're watching it, the contents, the visual that's applied for the video version, we are joined yet again by Jackson from Full Circle, editor-in-chief over there. Jackson, I don't know if you want to say a few words before we get more into it.
Yeah, if you listened to last episode, I said something at the end, and I think it's fair for me to have come back to discuss what I talked about in last episode. And to just put it simply, I am here to eat crow.
The last topic we have, returning to the Snydercut stuff. So kind of a little detour we took, I guess, in that conversation. We're talking about how this more so affects really the future of the DC films, the DCEU. For example, this happened during the Man of Steel watch party, so let's just talk about that really quick, right out the bat. Man of Steel 2, I think this could lead into a Man of Steel 2 production announcement in the future, depending on how things progress. I'm going to let you kind of talk about it a little bit because, before recording, you brought up the agent and stuff like that. So I don't know if you want to let the audience kind of know what you were referencing before.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation. We're gonna, the Snyder Cut. I want to word this properly so I don't have to come back to this and feel bad about what I said. But we're entering this age now that we're entering this age now where the Snyder Cut coming in is going to clearly make an effect on the DCEU. And from what we know of the DCEU prior, that they were moving past the Snyder stuff and pushing away from the Snyder stuff. Going into this next era, they wanted to kind of get a clean slate, but it's clear that the actors and people who signed on and other people had this vision in mind, and that included things like Supergirl and a Man of Steel 2 and Suicide Squad, being more in line with the Justice League and the BVS that had come out before it. And it's definitely a complicated situation, and I think Snyder coming in and getting in good with WB and these new these new executives could lead to a much bigger role down the line. And I think when talking about the Snyder Cut and its actual existence and him having creative control of it and them releasing it, I think we're entering this age where maybe Zack Snyder finds his way back into the DCEU, whether it be on characters he's already worked on, whether it be on a Man of Steel 2, whether it be on a crazy potential Justice League sequel for all we know. So I think all the options are open.
Yeah, I think when I first hear this, Henry Cavill, it's worth noting his agent is The Rock's ex-wife, who
Danny Garcia,
who they're on great terms. It's not anything bad like that, but they're on great terms, and she actually runs The Rock's $7 Productions with him. I think she's the CEO of it, and The Rock is more of like kind of the example I would use is The Rock is like the El Presidente from Barstool, right? He's the face of it, very much so. He's still very active in it, and the CEO of Barstool is what Garcia is basically. She runs the actual more kind of business day to day, all that stuff. Now, she was actually not publicizing, but she was promoting Henry Cavill's, joining of the stream. She did a little winky face thing in terms of it, kind of teasing, maybe this might be something that leads to something else. And The Rock has also been really friendly and really great with Henry Cavill, supporting his Superman interpretation, advocating for certain things like either a Man of Steel 2, Black Adam appearing, then having a fight sequence, or, Superman appearing in Black Adam and them having a fight sequence. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but didn't The Rock and or $7 Productions co-produce in some aspects Shazam?
I believe so. He's very much connected, and the group is to Black Adam, Shazam, and the DCU in general.
Yeah, and The Rock, for those who don't know, I mean, The Rock, his transcendence in Hollywood is legendary. I mean, this dude has pull. You know what I mean? Like, if The Rock wants something done in a movie that he's affiliated in, it's going to get done. No one's really saying no to The Rock. I mean, you got to be a big guy in the film business to be saying no to a superstar like The Rock at this point in his career. This isn't Tooth Fairy anymore. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is low-key kinda also The Rock helping in terms of getting things moving, more so for Henry Cavill in Man of Steel 2 than the Snydercut. Just because, you know, in this situation, Man of Steel 2 is to Deadpool what The Rock is to Hugh Jackman. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really publicized all too much, but you ask Ryan Reynolds about it and he'll tell you, without Hugh Jackman, we would not have Deadpool. So,
all right, I think the the stars are aligning to where a Man of Steel 2 is a viable option. I think that people, after The Witcher, and I know we've talked about this before, after The Witcher and, the all the Snyder Cut stuff, and let's say, hey, we have not seen Henry Cavill's true portrayal of Superman from what was in the Snyder Cut on screen yet. We saw what Joss Whedon shot. We saw all the mustache stuff. That stuff was all tainted. It was all thrown out, and it didn't work for a lot of people. It definitely didn't work for me. And I think, going in here and seeing what Snyder's vision was for the character in his next arc, his third movie in the next piece of his arc, I thought it was, BVS was a misstep for the character in my mind. He wasn't in it enough. He didn't do enough. But moving into Justice League, where he would come back to life and have this bigger role to play, I think there's a lot of room to move forward with Henry Cavill back in this role, a role he deserves to continue to play, and to give him another shot at a solo movie. And listen, Zack Snyder wouldn't be my first choice to come back and direct, but having him produce it, I think would be important. I think, getting those aspects of Krypton that we got that everyone loves. I mean, that was, Krypton has never looked better, never felt better, never been better than it was in Man of Steel. And I think we need more of that. And I think putting, Man of Steel 2 in development is the right move to make.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they would do it after, Zack Snyder's Justice League comes out, but I do think it's worth mentioning. We touched upon this earlier, that the new Warner Media CEO, and I guess the execs as a whole, they're very pro-Snyder compared to the previous ones. So if Snyder can get back in the good graces of WB, I think that increases the percentage of getting a Man of Steel 2 versus a rumored reboot that had been circulating amongst circles, for a lot, that they were going to be kind of moving away from Henry Cavill's depiction. And I think a lot of other things work in Henry's favor too. Not only that, but the fact that The Witcher was a huge success. Mission Impossible was a huge success. Having more of those successes behind him, I think also really helps his argument for having another Superman movie, because you can, if it's an issue of being a box office draw, you can draw that up. And I think something else worth mentioning as well, and Snyder yet again hinted towards it, is that Man of Steel 2 may have originally been planned to include in some way, shape, or form Supergirl. Which would have been really interesting, because you have the whole situation of, someone escaped the pod. And I think beforehand, Zack Snyder said very bluntly that was Supergirl, and that she's basically been living on Earth, pseudo-immortal style for the last 1,000, years or so, or couple thousand years and all that stuff. Or there was like a graphic novel, like a prelude that showed the scout ship landing and Kara Zor-El was one of the people on it, something like that. I can't remember the exact thing because it was so many years ago now, but it seems like it was always planned at one point. Snyder wanted to introduce Supergirl and do Brainiac as the villain and like all that stuff. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that was a very interesting story, and I think the timing is a little weird given that report a couple weeks ago about how they may have scrapped Supergirl in lieu of doing the Superman reboot.
Wow, yeah, I forgot about that. That's very true.
Yeah, that came out, but then you listen to Snyder talk, and it's clear that he's in with WB. He clearly is in some type of situation where he has knowledge of things, and he kept saying, hey, during the watch party just today, hey, stay tuned. the Supergirl stuff, stay tuned. And people are like, what is he talking about? Why would he say that? Because, you know, they didn't realize what was coming at the end where he was saying, hey, I'm back. We're doing the Snyder Cut. Let's do it. And then we're like, well, hey, maybe he knows more than he's leading on. And he's saying that, hey, maybe the Zack Snyder-esque, you know, Supergirl is on the way.
You know, my theory on that, based on everything we know and have heard, I 100% would believe a situation occurred where basically the whole making a solo, non-related, from what I understand, Supergirl movie was put on hold and put on the back burner as soon as it was officially greenlit to do the Snyder Cut. I 1000% believe that, because I think it's also 1000% in effect that if they do a Man of Steel 2, I don't think Zack Snyder would direct it. I think he would produce it. I
don't think he'll ever direct another DCEU movie. Whether that means he's involved or not is a completely different, you know, situation.
I think 100% he would produce it, executive produce it, and I think he'd be a rather hands-on executive producer. Let me add that. I don't think he would just be like Nolan, whose name might be on it and he might help with the initial story outline, but that's it. I think Snyder would be an active participant in it. The cast and crew seem to love him and love his presence, and they have tons of really heartfelt stories of interactions on set. So I think he'd be a part of it in that way, but I do think another director would kind of fill that role, so to speak. And I think Zach would probably pick the director as well, or at least give, you know, his blessing for the director, something like that. But I 100% believe if they do a Man of Steel 2, the villain would be Brainiac. And I also 1000% believe, in the deep roots of my heart, that it would be Supergirl as a supporting character introduced as well. I 1000% believe that, because the amount of world building that has occurred for Supergirl, the amount of world building Zach has included for Brainiac as well. A lot of people don't really notice this, but there is a lot of subtle Brainiac references in Man of Steel.
Absolutely.
Depending on what depiction of Brainiac you would like to, you know, look on, but it's out there. It's definitely out there, and honestly, yeah, Supergirl would be a great character for a Man of Steel 2. I would think thematically, in terms of, you know, you have a character, and I guess if you do it the Man of Steel version, she wouldn't really be the young, naive Supergirl, right? Because she would have been around Earth for thousands of years.
It would be a much different depiction.
That'd be really interesting. So maybe it wouldn't be, they'd have to retcon that probably, because I don't see them doing that. I could see them maybe doing more of a Kara Zor-El that, like, my whole pitch of it, right, if I were to do it, you know, in like a minute or less, it would be, she was already captured by Brainiac as the last surviving Kryptonian. Then Brainiac realizes there's another surviving Kryptonian, but this surviving Kryptonian has like more quote unquote worth to him, right? Because it's Superman. He's, you know, he defeated Steppenwolf, yada, 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 yada. So the value of having that in your collection goes up automatically. So I could see something where Brainiac uses Supergirl to more or less kind of trap Superman to capture him. And you could have a whole thing, you know, where Supergirl's like an unwitting servant of Brainiac helping to capture Superman. Something like that. A storyline like that, where in that case, Brainiac's your real antagonist, of course, but you can also have the inevitable fight scene featuring Superman and Supergirl, because, you know, they're going to have that in some way, shape, or form. You get to have that. It could work in the context of the story, and then the story can end with Superman and Supergirl joining forces to defeat Brainiac. I definitely think that could work. Something like that could work in some way, shape, or form. I mean, how would you do it in terms of introducing Supergirl?
I think you have to explain why she wouldn't have come during Man of Steel. You know, Zod does that broadcast where he comes in and says, hey, like, Kal-El of Krypton, you know, come give yourself up or we're going to destroy the world, that kind of thing. And, you know, why wouldn't she have heard that? I think, you know, something that just popped in my mind a little bit. I know there was a storyline they'd done in animation. I know it involved Darkseid, where Kara ends up on Themyscira. fighting alongside the Amazonians, and she trains there for a while. But that was when she was initially found. Yeah. But I think maybe there's a scenario where she was there, where she's not in front of a TV. She's not living in modern society. I suppose she's off on secluded island, and maybe she comes out, or maybe she's lost her memory. Something like that, where she has to realize who she is and join up with Clark and fight Brainiac, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, another thing I'd like to see too is, I guess, Mon-El and Daxam. Because they mentioned in Man of Steel. I mean, because anything they do in Man of Steel 2, you would imagine would be building off more so Man of Steel
versus you would hope so.
BVS and Justice League. I mean, obviously, Superman has a lot of character development from those other movies, but narratively, you would think you would stem more from the Man of Steel film. But, they touched a lot on the old outposts and terraforming other planets that they did. And I know Daxam was referenced in Man of Steel in like the art book or something like that, not necessarily directly in the movie, but it'd be cool if they maybe had Daxamites and Daxam, appear. I think that'd be really cool. But I think it's inevitable, Supergirl coming. There's just been, it's that saying, when there's smoke, there's fire. And there's been so much smoke, both from Snyder and in general at WB. I think having Supergirl appear in a Man of Steel 2 works out really well, because then they could still do your Supergirl movie. You know what I mean? If it goes really well, the reception's really positive, but I don't see how they do Man of Steel 2 without her. And I'm going to leave it at that. But another thing I want to touch upon with the future of the DC films, DCEU, with this whole Snydercut thing happening and Snyder potentially having more creative influence again in the whole DC films. I don't think he's going to influence Matt Reeves' Batman. I don't think we're getting another Batfleck, don't get me wrong. But it'd be curious to see WB doing what I would call the apology tour. If they did some sort of Ayer cut for Suicide Squad, I wouldn't be mad at it. Actually, I would really want that, because there's 3 specific things about Ayer's original vision of the Suicide Squad movie I really want to see. First and foremost is that there was originally more Batman in it, I guess, and they touched upon Batman killing the Joker and Harley Quinn killing Robin, and that is why Harley Quinn is in jail. That is why the Joker has damage on him, because I guess he wrote that as a joke to Batman, because Batman, when he was beating the hell out of the Joker, ruined his face, ruined his smile, so the Joker can't really smile anymore, which I guess is also why he has like the hand tattoo thing. So, there's a whole backstory behind that. And I guess the reason why in BVS, Batman is in the penthouse thing he's in instead of Wayne Manor is because, I guess while he was fighting the Joker or something relating to Jason's death in the DCEU that originally was going to be touched upon, I think in a flashback, either in BVS or Suicide Squad, but I think it was in Suicide Squad, they were going to show Wayne Manor being burnt down during this whole, Batman versus Joker kind of thing. And I guess also Jared Leto's Joker, love him or hate him, had a lot more scenes, and the I'm going to say this word right. I'm going to try it one more time. Chronologically, the placement of certain scenes with Jared Leto's Joker was out of place in the theatrical version. That's what I've heard. And so that's one big thing I would love to see in Ayer's original vision. 2, the original tone. If you look at the original teaser for Suicide Squad versus the later trailers, it's night and day. I was really excited at first for Suicide Squad because I thought it would have more of a vibe similar to the movie he made, Fury. I don't know if you saw that, Jackson.
Yeah, I absolutely love Fury. It's
Fury
incredible.
To me was your textbook Suicide Squad. I mean, when I saw
yeah, it's a band of misfits getting into a situation where they have to fight their way out. It's very, that misfit kind of, the kind of Western kind of feel of getting a ragtag group together to take on a bigger threat is really timeless. Yeah. And I think, Ayer did kind of capture that in Fury.
So I was really thinking that would kind of transplant in Suicide Squad in a lot of ways. But the third reason, the reason why Snyder coming more back in the good graces of WB really, I think, could have really big effects on this is because originally Suicide Squad was going to lead into Justice League. It wasn't being made just to be made. It actually had a place in the narrative. overall. And the place in the narrative was those creatures, those weird eye-like creatures that, serve Enchantress, right? Originally, they were going to be parademons. And originally, Enchantress was going to be, I think, some sort of pseudo-apocalyptic character. That's what she was going to be Enchantress and all that stuff, but her character's roots were going to be apocalyptic. And instead of her brother being that big CGI bad guy, it was going to be Steppenwolf. And they were going to be making not just some random energy beam portal, but it was going to be a mother box-like portal to bring Steppenwolf and the invasion to Earth. That originally was what was going on in the Suicide Squad. It was basically a precursor to the narrative of Justice League, with the mother boxes and all that stuff, making a bridge for Steppenwolf's army to come through. So the fact that we didn't get that, and just how much we know was deliberately changed to make Suicide Squad not connected to the Snyder kind of verse, if you want to call it that narrative. Those are the reasons I would also really be interested in seeing an Ayer cut, so to speak. And I don't know if, from what I understand, it was all filmed. So it would be a better situation actually than Snyder's, in terms of they wouldn't need to do reshoots on anything. It would just be correcting some CGI and recutting the film as originally it was supposed to be. I can't speak to the quality of it, of course, whether it'd be better received or not, but I would love to see it for those reasons. I mean, I don't know, Jackson, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, the Ayer cut is something a little more even sort of not as mysterious as a Snyder cut, but it's one of those things that was like, well, he had this a whole other version too. I mean, this one to me is more comparable like the Josh Trank cut of Van Forstic, where it was like, the director claims that there is this much better version of the film out there, and that we're not getting to see it, which was which is frustrating. So where it's like, it's something that I hope maybe down the line we get to see, but I think that's a situation where it might be much further. There's obviously not the backing behind the Ayer cut like there is the Snyder cut online, so I think it probably wouldn't have done them as much good if they'd attempted to do this with the Ayer cut rather than the Snyder cut. But this definitely does open the door, I feel like.
Yeah, 100%. I think also a lot of it, first and foremost, nothing's going to get done, I don't think, overnight. If the Snyder cut is super well received, let's say the Snyder cut for HBO Max, right, breaks every conceivable record somehow on HBO Max, and people are clamoring for more, 1000% I would believe they would do the Ayer cut, especially if the fans right now start being as active and proactive, I should say, more so, about hashtag release the Ayer cut, and David Ayer himself has been a little bit more open to talking. And my theory is that David Ayer has been talking a little bit more about it because he saw what's going on with Snyder. So maybe he's a little bit more open to speaking out about it now because the old suits are gone. And
yeah, potentially, for sure.
And maybe he feels deep down, he can speak more freely on it again and talk about the truth of what happened to Suicide Squad. I mean, if people think Justice League is a different film, Suicide Squad, theatrical versus original vision that was filmed for, night and day. Like there was I heard 30-40 minutes worth of Joker footage removed. Mm-hmm. I mean, whether you love or hate Leto's version of the Joker, that's a crap ton of footage gone. So man, I don't know. I mean, I heard some of those montage scenes. I mean, there was one scene in particular for Leto's Joker that probably was better left removed, which is like him peeing on Harley or something like that. But
yeah, there was some weird stuff in there as well.
Like, there's some weird stuff probably better left unseen. But at the same time, probably some of that montage stuff they had was more fleshed out, and it just got put into that colorful montage in Suicide Squad to save time. So I would have loved to have seen that. Maybe the movie would be a lot better received that way. I know originally before, so here's my thing, right? There is a film ending before reshoots and there's a film after reshoots. And before the reshoots they did that were further from Ayer's original vision, Diablo wasn't killed. That's a big change as well.
Yeah, and that's something he talked about just on Twitter, I think this week or last week.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what I'm saying in terms of this would also very much be a different film. And I think to to the question you posed in our first topic, I think it would supersede the canon. And I think Warner should do it. You know, the more I say it, if they're going to be doing the Snyder Cut thing, I think they should do this as well for Suicide Squad. Maybe you can say it's kind of a kiss and make up apology for the directors and for the people they screwed, trying to be more Marvel-like at the time instead of embracing their creators. I think that would go a long way, you know, with the fan base and with those creators as well. And also at the same time, I think it would just be a great way of making amends. And the best part about it in my eyes is, look, you do this for Justice League, you do it for Suicide Squad, whether you make a Man of Steel 2 or not, there is nothing. I don't think a fan could tweet and complain about a single thing ever again about WB's treatment of Snyder, of Ayer, because if they do these two things, that's like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing better you can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then if you want to release everything bundled up, you know, Marvel did it with the Infinity Saga, Star Wars did it with the Skywalker Saga, you know, the Snyder Saga, you know. You know, we're gonna get a Snyder Saga.
Hey, it's another avenue to make money.
So I mean, and at the end of the day, that's all they care about is making money. And the situation we're in right now, and I'm gonna end it off on this, my thoughts, and I'm gonna turn it to you before we just end the whole podcast out, because I think this is our longest yet. So editing this will be interesting. But we're in a situation content-wise where a lot of films are frozen in their production. You know, studios are doing their best to try retrofitting things to fit certain guidelines for COVID-19 and all that stuff, but nothing is, set in stone. And even if stuff starts filming tomorrow, it probably will be moving at a much slower pace in terms of what they were doing before, because they have to be so careful. And things are going to be pushed back. So in my opinion, if you can put an extra, actually, you probably wouldn't need to put 20 to 30 because you're not doing as extensive reworking as you are for the Snyder Cut. But besides the Snyder Cut, if you could get the ball rolling low key on an Ayer cut of Suicide Squad, I would do it for the sheer fact that you're getting content out there. And, especially if the Snyder Cut thing does really well, you're going to look really good. Also doing the Ayer cut. I mean, the fans are going to applaud. Like, no one's going to say anything negative, I don't think. Fans will applaud you. I mean, you're not reinventing the wheel here. This has happened with Blade Runner. This has happened with Superman 2. You know what I mean? Like, they've done these Ultimate Editions, director recuts before. So that's just my 2 cents on it. Oddly enough, Blade Runner and Superman 2, both franchises, including either Jared Leto or DC characters. Go figure. But, yeah, Jackson, I don't know if you have any final thoughts on this topic before we wrap it up.
It's like I said at the top, this is, it's a shocking development and one that I am welcoming and attempting to, come in with open arms and just seeing where we can take this and where, what the Snyder Cut can bring in the next year. And I think that's it. I think I made my penance.
Your penance. Yeah. Okay. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. This is a very long conversation, so I'm curious to see how long each segment will end up being. But Jackson, thanks for being available for this and everything. It's great to have that continuation from the last episode discussion.
Had to come back and discuss my opinions.
Exactly. In terms of all the DC stuff, though, I just think it's a great time to be a fan, especially if you're a DC fan, especially if you're a fan of the Snyder Cut stuff. If you were a fan on social media, tweeting day in, day out, congratulations. Your hard work, I guess you could say, has been rewarded. But at the same time, I think we need to be measured in the steps we take going forward, just because there was a lot of harassment, a lot of, lack for a better word, verbal abuse and stuff like that to a lot of people on social media over this movement. And I think we should just take this time to be grateful, I guess, and reverent that we're getting it, because this is something that I think if you asked a lot of people, definitely a year ago, it was still a no. But, before the beginning of 2020, you asked people about this, it was a less than 1% chance kind of thing. So the fact that we're getting this 1 in a million opportunity of getting the Snyder Cut, I think for fans, we should be really grateful, really excited, and just not do anything to screw it up, so to speak. Because you don't put $20-30 million in something willingly, or not willingly, but you don't do that, without having
you don't do it
without reason, but also you don't do that just to do it. So like, this is probably a very sensitive production, and we don't want to just like you made it happen with your words, you don't want to make it unhappen with your words, if you know what I mean. But I doubt they'd pull the plug on this kind of thing. Anyways,
no, after an official
this
announcement,
type of hyped up announcement, there's no way. But I'm just saying in general, let's be as cool as we can about the whole thing, and not give people reasons to look negatively on this whole thing, because this could inspire other movies in the future, other movements in the future, based on the success of this. So let's I guess be an example to aspire towards, as Snyder's Superman would probably say. But anyways, Jackson, thanks for being here. For those who've listened to the whole thing, thanks for listening to it. If you're listening to it on any of the podcasting platforms, SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc., let me know which podcast platform you're listening to on. I'm really curious. If you're listening to it on YouTube, thanks for watching the whole thing. I know it's rather long, so I really do appreciate the patience and the, being willing to listen to our voices. I've been told by someone my voice makes you sleepy. So hopefully people are still awake. But thanks for listening. Let us know your thoughts down below on the topics, the Snyder Cut stuff, future DC films, and Batwoman recasting. And with all that said and done, we'll see you guys later. Jackson, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at JacksonHayes67 and follow Full Circle at Full Circle Cine, and just check out our work at FullCircleCinema.com.
Sweet. Yeah, so talk to you all later, and we'll see you guys next episode.